So good morning, everyone. I think we can start. I will make a brief introduction. First of all, thank you for joining us for this webinar, for the webinar Capturing Advanced Technology Uptake in Manufacturing, the case of AI, IoT, cloud, and robotics. The event is organized by SPIN with the collaboration of the Advanced Technologies for Industry project. This webinar is organized as part of Smart Manufacturing Matchmaking to 2021 that includes various events that will be held all during this year, such as also virtual company mission, brokerage events, and investment opportunities. Today in particular, I started the first session of the brokerage events that will have another session in November and is an opportunity for companies to meet other companies as research centers that work in the area of smart manufacturing and industry 4.0. And also this afternoon, we'll have another webinar at 3:30 on artificial intelligence, ethics, opportunity, and pitfalls. SPIN organized this event also as partner of Enterprise Europe Network, a network funded by the European Commission that gives free support to companies to innovate and grow on an international scale. Now, I give the screen to Giorgio Micheletti, Consulting Director at IDC4EU, that will do his presentation. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A part. So you can write in the chat, or also you can raise your hand, and we will allow you to make a question. So I leave the screen to Giorgio for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you to SPIN for having me here today. As Antonio said already, the idea here today is to present to you and to familiarize you with the project called Advanced Technologies for Industry. This is a project that IDC, together with other companies, is currently conducting for the European Commission, and in particular for DG GROW and the ESMEA, so the Agency for the Innovation Council and Middle and Small and Medium Enterprises in Europe. The focus of the project is on a series of technologies that we have jointly defined as advanced technologies, and what is their role in bringing forward the digitalization process and the process of industry modernization in Europe. The slides that I put together today, they focus on some of these technologies that you can see in the title here, so advanced IoT, artificial intelligence, cloud, and robotics, and specifically on the manufacturing sector. Just a quick idea on the project. So the project actually started already in 2018, the end of 2018. It's now in its last phase. There will be another couple of months before the formal end. But during these almost 3 years, we have produced several reports, qualitative and quantitative analysis. Quantitative because we have also measured the impact of these technologies across the different industries in Europe in quantitative terms, so with indicators. In parallel, we have been organizing and are still organizing a series of events. So I will show you the website, and you can still attend other events for the next couple of months from now until the end of the project. So quick idea on the project. The project is inserted, let's say, in this overall picture of the new generation technologies and the transformation that they are bringing about in Europe and in different industries in Europe. The aim of the project is to systematically monitor the technology trends and provide data on the advanced technologies. So it's intended as a monitor throughout these 3 years. We are checking at regular pace what is the impact of these technologies. And it produces, as you can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, it produces a series of different results, quantitative results, because as I said, that there is a data dashboard with different indicators. But there is also a mapping exercise of different technology centers, meaning centers where these technologies have been or are being developed in Europe. There are a series of reports called technology watches. They look at the trends of these technologies. There are reports on different sectors, and there is one on the manufacturing as well. Plus, there are reports also for policy briefs. So we're looking at the policy elements behind these, the development of these technologies. In other words, what policymakers should do to bring forward the uptake and the effects of these technologies on the European industries. And we also make some comparison of the situation in Europe with the situation in other countries outside Europe, namely China and the US, because clearly they are the most important partners or competitors, depending from the point of view. I mentioned the technologies that are part of the scope of this project. We have identified, together with the European Commission, 16 technologies that we have called advanced technologies. There are a mix of what the European Commission called until recently, actually, key enabling technologies and digital technologies. So you've seen here things like, for example, cloud computing or big data or blockchain or connectivities. Well, these are typical digital technologies. Now, without these technologies, clearly there is little or no digital transformation possible. And these technologies are relatively horizontal, so they are widespread and used across all the different sectors of the economy in Europe and elsewhere. But there are also more, I would say, niche technologies or sector-specific technologies, like you can see here, advanced manufacturing technologies. Well, clearly this is things like 3D printing, for example. This is in manufacturing, advanced materials, or industrial biotechnologies, nanotechnologies, photonics. These are technologies that are, and you will see it in a moment, when it comes to the uptake and the adoption of these technologies in Europe, they are less advanced than other technologies, but doesn't mean that they are less important. It's simply because they are a bit more specific and niche to some specific industry sector. We have already, I think, talked about the different pieces and bits and pieces of the project. This is just to say that we have a panoply of different results, and you can pick and choose what is probably more interesting to you, according to the fact that you want to look into specific sectors, or you want to look into future products that can be developed by these by the applications of these technologies, and so on. So stay tuned on this one, and I'll show you in a moment some more details about these how the results are organized. In terms of statistical data, so how we come about in producing these data and producing these results, I'll give you here a very generic overview of what we're doing. So essentially, we are looking at these 16 technologies that I mentioned before, from the whole value chain, or the creation chain, if you want, of these technologies. So we're looking at the generation of these technologies. We're looking, and therefore we're, for example, checking the number of patents, where the patents are registered, who is producing these patents in Europe. And so we are making comparison among different member states. So those who are more active in one technologies and less active in other technologies, etc. We're looking at the generation of technologies, and we're looking at the actual uptake. So where are these technologies implemented and adopted, and then we look at the use of these technologies, what we call use cases, and therefore by looking where they are generated, how and where they are adopted, and then how they are used, that we can measure and describe the performance in terms of industry modernization. So you see it on the right hand side and the bottom of the slide. Another quick check of the different reports that we have. I think I've already described this, but here on the right hand side again, you see the type of reports that we are producing. There are different angles that are apprehended, and I think you can go then to the website and download what it's more interesting to you. I think we can skip this. I just wanted to maybe spend 1 minute on this slide because this is specifically on the sectoral watch. We are talking manufacturing here. So if you look at the type of sectors that we are addressing here in this type of reports, we have different branches and different sub-sectors, if you want, that can be of relevance also for this specific webinar here. So we've got electronics or medtech, if we're talking healthcare, we've got chemicals, we've got automotive. So you see that manufacturing is textiles or machinery. So manufacturing is definitely covered by our analysis. Technology centers is also another interesting element that is been incorporated in this project. Technology centers are essentially the link between what has been, let's say, developed and generated in terms of technology, and how the technologies are going to be applied. So the concept here is helping companies, and particularly SMEs, to let's say overcome the famous valley of death. So you've got research, but then you have to apply this research and bring products on the market. There are a series of technology centers in Europe, mostly financed and funded by European initiatives. And so we keep this map constantly updated, and we have classified this map according to different sectors and different technologies that they are supporting. We also produce at the end of every year, we are now producing the final one, so-called general finding report. So here is a sort of a summary of all the reports, and this is another way of looking at our results without having to read the whole. Now, after this presentation of the general project, I would like to give you some insights of some of the topics that we have chosen for today. And we're going to talk about the uptake of the advanced technologies, and in particular to some technologies that are relevant in manufacturing. This slide shows you the results of one of the surveys that we have conducted through the let's say to the duration of the project. We have conducted actually 2 surveys. This one has been conducted in 2020 at the end of last year. So the results are still pretty new and valid. And you can see that technologies or advanced technologies can be divided in 3 or 4, let's say, layers according to the level of uptake in Europe. These results are for all EU 27 in all different sectors. So there are technologies like cloud computing or even advanced manufacturing, security, connectivity. As I said, without these technologies, there's little digitization that can go on. And these technologies are uptaken by 60% or even more of companies in Europe. There are then other advanced technologies that are perhaps still pretty widely uptaken and adopted, but slightly less. This is the case of IoT, but also big data and mobility. Now, IoT is clearly a major technology in manufacturing, but as I will show you, it's also of fundamental importance for many other sectors and is becoming more and more popular in other sectors like retail, for example, or even the financial sector. So there are multiple applications of these technologies. We've got then artificial intelligence, but also robotics, both very important for the manufacturing sectors. They are in a lower layer here, so they are taking between 10 and 30%. Actually, I can tell you that both artificial intelligence and robotics are around 30%, and our forecast, they project these technologies on the increase. So certainly, if we are to repeat this survey this year, they will certainly move on up to the next level. And then there are these technologies that are more niche technologies, and as I said, they are not as taken as the other, but they are becoming important, and in any case, they are specifically for some specific sectors. I think an important concept that I'd like to stress here is the concept of co-creation and let's say adoption of technologies, of more than one technologies together. So if you see here on the right hand side, our survey says that 78 of the interviewed companies in Europe are adopting between 2 and 5 technologies at the same time. This is important because there is the actual effect of the adoption of these technologies on the industry in Europe is given by the simultaneous adoption of more than one technologies. If you only apply artificial intelligence, but you don't have big data and you know that data behind it, there's probably little you can do. So the concept of having more technologies at the same time is important, and the fact that 78% are saying on average that they are in Europe they are applying more than 2 technologies together. This is certainly encouraging for the future of the industry digitalization in Europe. By looking this slide on the other side, it shows you the list of the advanced technologies on the left hand side here, and it shows the different markets, the different sectors on which the technologies are currently adopted. And the size of these bubbles show you the percentage of adoption. So we've seen that the maximum is around 60-70%. So the biggest bubbles represent approximately 60 to 70% of adoption, and of course they become very small if the adoption is lower. You can see that we have technologies like those who are on the top here, so connectivity, security, cloud. They are adopted across the board, across all the different sectors. But there are technologies like robotics, for example, that they are clearly important in manufacturing. And here we have distinguished between discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing. I think this distinction is probably familiar with you, but it means that discrete manufacturing is assembling pieces of different products. So automotive is a classic example of discrete manufacturing, whereas process manufacturing is the formula. So it's the idea of producing like chemicals or pharma, or producing liquids, producing paints, and so on. So we see that robotics is featuring very well in manufacturing. The same goes for IoT, but as I said, IoT is becoming more and more popular across many other sectors. So look, for example, oil and gas, utilities at the end on the right hand side, or even in finance or even in healthcare is becoming very important. Artificial intelligence is also widespread across many sectors, but again, featuring pretty well in manufacturing, especially in discrete manufacturing. And public cloud is, again, by definition, a very generic or general purpose technology that is applied across the board. When we look at the actual uptake of these technologies, and in particular, we compare the results of the last survey that we conducted last year, the end of last year, and with the results of the previous surveys in 2019, it's also interesting to look at what were the differences in 2019 when asking what are the plans to adopt in the next 12 months. So the slide here may seem a bit confusing, but if you look, the orange bar is the result in 2019. So how many companies were already adopting these technologies? And then we asked them at the same time, what are your plans of adoption over the next 12 months? And this is the yellow bar. The blue bar is, on the other hand, is what is the percentage of adoption of these technologies now, or actually in 2020? So what we can see here is that for the technologies that we have chosen to discuss today, there is a gap between what was said in 2019 and what actually happened in 2020. If we take IoT, for example, you can see that slightly less than 40% adopted that technology in 2019, but there were quite a few people that they said that they would have adopted the technologies in the next 12 months for a total of almost 60%. But then if we look what actually happened in at the end of 2020, we see that slightly more than 40% adopted these technologies. So what happens here is that in 2020, the pandemic has hit very hard, and so many investments have been postponed or if not totally cancelled. And this goes for many of these technologies, especially in the upper part of this slide. So it's the same for artificial intelligence, it's the same for robotics. But on the other hand, if you look on the bottom side of this slide, then you see that there is a reverse effect. So a technology like blockchain, for example, or even advanced materials, which is certainly relevant for manufacturing. Actually, you can see that in 2020, the adoption is bigger, and it's bigger not only of what was adopted in 2019, but also of the projection or plans of adoption that were disclosed in 2019. So here the trend is definitely more positive. And we believe as IDC, our job in the end is to forecast and analyze the markets, the technology markets. We believe that it's going to be the same also for the other technologies, but it will take 1 year more because of the big impact of the pandemic. Another quick look at these technologies and of the different sectors with specific attention on manufacturing is looking at how much and what are companies spending for the adoption of technologies or the budget in general. And here we have, for simplicity, we have categorized the budget of a company into 4 different elements. So we've got spending on traditional IT, which is the blue one. We got spending on those 16 advanced technologies that we have highlighted there before. We've got spending in classic industry equipment and machinery, which is the green one, and the research and development. And we can see manufacturing. The manufacturing is interestingly the one that has the lowest score of spending in traditional IT, which is a good sign because there is more space for advanced technologies, more space for research and development. On the other hand, it's clearly by definition and for its nature in equipment and machinery. So the idea is that probably in the future, this will have to be, that there will be a shift or a continuing trend on reducing spending in traditional IT and increasing it for advanced technologies for the orange bar that you see here. When looking at the different technologies that we have taken into consideration today, the ATI watch, so this specific type of reports that we have produced that we are producing in the ATI project, gives you an idea of the major trends and gives you also some perspectives of a wider context of where these technologies are being developed. So here there are some points regarding artificial intelligence, IoT, and cloud. It's also important to look and to dive into the different results. If you are interested, you can pick and choose your own ATI watch depending on the technology you're interested in. But perhaps one of the major, I would say, concept that these reports are developing is the concept of use cases. As I said, use case is not a case study. Case study is a real life example of how a technology is adopted. Use cases are generalization of these different real life examples. And we have created a map in the project of the main use cases for the different technologies. Again, they are listed on the left-hand side here. Map these technologies use cases with the different vertical markets. And I've highlighted here what happens for IoT, AI, and robotics in manufacturing. You can see that there are different ways of adopting or of using these technologies. Some of them are repeated across the different sectors. Some of them are specific for the different sectors. Without going into much detail, I'd like to show you some examples by technologies by showing this type of chart, which in my opinion is really interesting because it plots the size, so the amount of money that is actually spent for these different use cases of the different technologies, and this is the size of the bubble. So the bigger the bubble, the higher the investments for the usage of a technology of AI in this case for a specific use case. But it plots this against growth. So what are the projection of growth of these technologies, or how these technologies have, of these use cases of technologies have grown, and how they are to grow in the short term. And this is the the y-axis. So you see that there is a growth only onto 2020, onto 2019, but also on the long term. So there it's growing. In the x-axis, you see that the growth for medium long term from here to 2023, for example. So in other words, if we take an example of AI here, defense and government intelligence, so the big bubble that is on the left-hand side. So this is big in terms of investment now, but in terms of growth, this is not projected to be very important in the future. But if we take something like asset and fleet management on the right-hand side, the bubble is smaller. It's relevant in any case, it's smaller, but it's projected to grow very fast, both in the short term as well as in the medium and long term. So this type of exercise has been developed for the different type of technologies. And again, I encourage you to look into the different results of our project, in particular to this ATI Watch series of reports. This is the example of cloud. And what has been highlighted here in orange are specific use cases for the manufacturing sector, for example, right? So again, if you look on the right-hand side, the use case like intelligent shop floor operation, then this one is not very big in terms of investment, but certainly growing at a very, very fast pace. I think this is just an idea of what the some of the results of our project are producing and will be produced and finalized in the next 2 months. If you have questions, of course, you can reach out to me or to Antonio, and Antonio will reach out to me. I encourage you to go on this website, the website that you can see here at the bottom right hand of this slide, because here you will see all the types of different reports and results that we have been producing over the past almost 3 years. And thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Giorgio, for this interesting presentation. I don't know if someone wants to make some question, maybe we can have some minutes. If you want to make some question, you can or write in the chat, or if you raise your hand, I can give you the possibility to unmute the microphone and to make questions.
Antonio, just for some reasons, I messed up with my settings, so I don't see if there are questions on the chat. So if there are, please tell
Yes,
them loud to me.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Saverio was asking, okay, no, is it possible to have the presentation? Yes, I think we will,
yeah, of course,
available the presentation on the page of the webinar for sure, so you can then have it. So if there are no questions, just okay, thank you for attending the webinar. I just want to remind that the event was organized as part of SMM 2021 and will be other event in these 2 days. There will be a brokerage event and there is another webinar. And also in the next months, there will be on July, and for sure on July and on November, from 17th to 19th of November, there will be the last event, the final event of SMM 2021 with the second session of the brokerage and other webinar and company mission. I see that someone wrote on the chat. So, Giorgio, do you have any ideas about anomaly detection system?
No, we don't go into that level of details, and certainly not for the manufacturing sectors. Now we have and I think I showed this at the beginning, we have a series of reports that are called Product Watch, and these reports are looking at how these technologies, because clearly if you take a technologies like artificial intelligence, this is like a general definition, and then you can break it down in many different smaller, let's say, applications. So if you look into the product watch that we have produced, and again you can see them in the under the website that I showed here. There are specific descriptions of some of the products that are coming out by the application, from the application of these technologies. Unfortunately, we do not have the one that you mentioned, but there are possibly similar technologies. So what I would suggest is to check more in detail what we have in that website.
Okay, thank you. There is another question from Georgios. I hope to spell well your name. he said, what training programs would you suggest for the integration of TOS technology for a technology provider? Are there any in the framework of AC?
No, there are for sure, but this is we don't go into that level of details. What we have done in our analysis, for example, is checking the level of skills that are currently available in Europe and see what is actually missing and what on the other hand is already there, where Europe is doing well vis-a-vis vis-a-vis other countries or other regions in the world. Bear in mind that this project is for policymakers at the European Commission. So our idea is to provide with a general picture, and then it's up to policymakers to take up these recommendations and say, okay, then if this is the situation, we are going to develop and to promote this, for example, trainings in that specific technology, because we see that, I don't know, again, artificial intelligence is becoming absolutely fundamental, but our SMEs in Europe, maybe only in Estonia and in Germany, are doing well. All the rest is lagging behind. We really need to do something. So this is not the objective of this project. Fortunately, I understand the question, but this is not what can be addressed by the project.
Okay, thank you again, George. And okay, if there is no other question, I think we can close here. Thank you for attending the webinar.
Thank you, Antonio, and thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.